This video is made possible by my generous Patreons. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to support the channel, then please become a Patreon today. You'll get exclusive access to voice channels in my Discord server. You'll have your name featured at the beginning or the end of my videos, and sometimes you might even get early access for some of my videos. If you're based, red-pilled, and extremely attractive, then become a Patreon today. Okay, the shameless advertising is over. Enjoy the video now.
Thanks a lot for letting me stay here. My parents lately have just been being so frustrating. Their divorce, it's so stressful, and they're constantly blaming it on me. Yeah, no problem, but why are they blaming you? I told my mom my dad was cheating on her. Any woman who works out of the house is obviously cheating, so I had good reason to trust my common sense. Conservative cousin is staying here? Oh, great. I can smell the male privilege from here. It's like a sausage party already. Wait, don't you have a penis also? How dare you talk about what's between my legs? Calm down, please. Stop fighting, okay? To be honest, I would rather have you both separated like Trump and Melania in 5 years. This is why we have locks on our doors, so that randoms don't just walk in and expect to be taken care of. Yeah, good point, Tucker Carlson. What, are those your hormone blocker treatment puberty surgery pills? You know that can make you sterile and give you a huge growth spurt, right? What, are you trying to transition to LeBron James? Do you even know what you're talking about? Those are the side effects of hormone treatment, not puberty blockers. What are you even talking about? Sterilization? How dare you force your heteronormativity on me? You know those things can also cause lower bone density, right? Well, actually, stop using your privilege to speak over a femme-identifying person, Dad. Prescribing puberty blockers should be illegal. Prescribing gender should be a felony. Wait, you realize that gender-affirming care like puberty blockers can be really beneficial, right? Dad, Wait. Huh? What? You think I don't research the stuff that's important to my femson? It's this kind of degeneracy leading to the downfall of the West. Me, on the other hand, well, I am saving the West. I will never be brainwashed by academia or facts. Puberty blockers should literally be prescribed to every child fresh out of the womb in case they turn out to be trans later on in life. This is not a crazy position. This is called being a not bad person. Why don't we approach this rationally? We are talking about a medical treatment that's been around for a while, right? Who needs to be rational? Send this Nazi to the gulag. Yep, there it is. Of course, you can never have a conversation about depriving people of their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness without them getting oh so triggered. Why are you taking more pills? Because I get constipated when I'm nervous. I need my laxatives. Duh!
Although it's the month of February, the sun is shining, and the temperature sits at a comfortable 65 degrees. You take a deep breath. Instantly, your nostrils are penetrated by the pungent scent of iced tea and incest. That's right, you're in the state of Alabama, and a group of Republicans have just introduced a bill that's soon approved by Alabama's Senate Health Committee, banning gender-affirming treatment for trans youth and punishing doctors with up to 10 years in prison for daring to prescribe potentially life-saving treatment. This is certainly extreme, but sadly, it's only one of the countless anti-transgender bills that have been introduced in the year of 2021 alone. It's only the beginning of May, and this year has already been a record-shattering year when it comes to anti-transgender legislation being introduced across the country. 31 states have introduced bills that ban transgender athletes from participating in sports consistent with their gender identities. 3 states, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee, have already signed these bills into law this year, A similar 2020 law in Idaho was swiftly struck down in federal court. The trans sport issue is a really complicated one, and of course there is gray area when it comes to the biological differences between males and females. There is certainly some nuance here that should be discussed, but not in this sensationalist conservative bubble. The truth is, transgender people have been able to compete in the Olympics since 2004, and no trans people have made it to the Olympics. The closest was recently when a few made it only to the trials. But this isn't really about concern for women's sports. This is just conservatives moving from one thing to the next. First it was, trans people bad. Then it was, oh, trans bathrooms, think of the women. And now it's, trans women competing in women's sports? Something I've literally never watched in my entire life? Not in the land of the free, you don't! What's much more concerning than the trans sports legislation are the bills targeting potentially life-saving treatment for trans youth. 20 states have introduced bills that prohibit or impede the administration of gender-affirming therapy to minors. One bill recently introduced in Alabama would make it a felony for medical providers to provide transition-related care to transgender minors. This bill was cleverly titled the Vulnerable Child Compassion and Protection Act. HB 1570, named the Arkansas Save Adolescents from Experimentation Act, was originally vetoed after passing both chambers of the legislature, but the veto was overridden days later. It's the first bill in the US to become law that would prohibit healthcare professionals from administering gender-affirming care. The day the veto was overridden, the ACLU announced that the organization would sue to prevent the bill from being enacted. Currently, the bill is set to go into effect 90 days after the legislature adjourns. The big issue is that these bills all treat gender treatment the same. Then again, what else do you expect when a bunch of mad Republicans write a bill as a knee-jerk reaction? For example, the Alabama bill targets puberty blockers, hormone treatment, and surgery. These are radically different things. Most major institutions like the Endocrine Society recommend that trans youth wait until the age of 18 to pursue surgery. So the bills criminalizing surgery for trans youth are just a massive virtue signal. Now, when it comes to puberty blockers and hormone treatment, conservatives constantly mix these up. Hormone therapy is something much more serious and permanent, and it involves introducing new hormones, testosterone or estrogen, to your body. The standard treatment for trans youth, kids around the age of 9, 10, or 11, struggling with gender dysphoria, is to simply socially transition, like dress as the gender you identify as, and sometimes puberty blockers. Puberty blockers are a reversible and safe way to hit the pause button on puberty as to avoid going through the wrong puberty, which has only been shown to increase the suicidality of trans youth later on in life. According to the New England Journal of Medicine, pubertal manifestations generally reappear within months after puberty blocking treatment has been stopped. Long-term fertility has not been fully evaluated, but preliminary observations are reassuring. Later studies have gone on to show that puberty blockers don't affect fertility either. Even more so, the FDA has already approved the use of puberty blockers for cis kids who sometimes begin puberty too early. This already is not an easy process. Kids suffering with gender dysphoria need to talk with their parents, a therapist, and doctors before puberty blockers are introduced. We already recognize that kids can suffer from mental illness like depression or ADHD. We already give kids ADHD medication, which can negatively impact the child's development, both physically and cognitively. The only reason conservatives flip out about puberty blockers is because they don't like trans people. Guidelines from the Endocrine Society, American Academy of Pediatrics, and World Professional Association for Transgender Health recommend that transgender adolescents be offered puberty blockers as they approach puberty. To better understand the effects of puberty blockers on mental health outcomes, researchers analyzed data from over 20,000 transgender adults. The study found a strong correlation between less suicide ideation and access to puberty blockers. The study also found that approximately 9 out of 10 transgender adults who had wanted but were denied pubertal suppression reported having suicidal ideation during their lifetime. So great job, Alabama. You call this bill the Vulnerable Child Compassion and Protection Act, yet you're trying to ban a form of treatment that's been shown to reduce suicide ideation for an already vulnerable group. Sounds like a virtue signal to me. Sometimes conservatives will respond to this conversation about puberty blockers with "my lower bone density." Studies have challenged assertions that puberty blockers cause loss of bone density also. At the start of treatment, all patients had normal bone mineral density. During treatment, bone density gradually increased in the younger patients, but slightly decreased in the older ones. However, after the teens received cross-sex hormones, bone density caught up, similar to the increase that occurs naturally in puberty. All patients had normal or near normal bone mass for their age after cross-sex hormone therapy. These findings reaffirm that halting puberty in gender dysphoric adolescents is a responsible practice that will not harm bone health. At the end of the day, all medication has risk, but every time you take medication, you have subconsciously decided that the benefit of that medication outweighs the potential risk. So I'd argue that even if puberty blockers did cause a slight decrease in bone density, that's a fair trade-off for an overall better quality of life. So now that we know puberty blockers are something that's been studied and used for decades, it's obvious the anti-trans bills targeting this treatment are rooted in nothing but bigotry and ignorance. Both the Vulnerable Child Compassion and Protection Act and the Arkansas Save Adolescents from Experimentation Act aren't about saving the children at all. These are about disliking the LGBT community. What's even more telling is that conservatives have always used this argument. The think of the children shtick has been the conservative MO since at least the 70s. Yeah, it seems the only time conservatives care about recycling is when it comes to their own bigoted dipshittery. In 1977, Anita Bryant campaigned against an anti-discrimination law protecting gay and lesbian people.
Last year, Dade County voters overwhelmingly repealed an ordinance granting special privileges to homosexuals. But the militant homosexuals don't take no for an answer.
She founded the first national anti-gay organization titled Save Our Children. In 1980, Paul Cameron begins publishing bogus studies proving that gay people are a risk to children, despite the fact this guy was expelled from the American Psychological Association for ethics violations. His work continues to be cited. In 1989, during a congressional hearing on violence against the LGBT community, a lesbian woman tells the horrific story of when she was stalked and abused for hours by a Christian soldier who claimed he was abusing her to, quote, protect children. Earlier in 2021, a right-wing coalition fought back against a bill to protect trans people from discrimination. The coalition was called the Promise to America's Children Coalition. This has always been the argument, and these anti-trans bills are no different. It's the age-old conservative bigotry hidden behind fear-mongering about protecting vulnerable children. The anti-trans bills are nothing but a virtue signal designed to block potentially life-saving treatment for youth struggling with gender dysphoria. Conservatives love to claim that being trans is a mental illness, and they'll cite the suicide rate as proof of that, but then they'll work overtime to block treatment that has been proven to lower the suicide rate. This is just a bunch of hypocritical nonsense propagated by Republicans to further discriminate against an already oppressed group, all while echoing the same anti-gay sentiments from decades ago. It's an absolute embarrassment.